Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm CW. I'm here at BTH&T. Got an interesting story. You know my fondness for the Central Intelligence Agency. If not, you will. Wink, wink. So the first agent to die in the line of duty was born not in the USA. He was born in Mexico City to a whaler. That's right, not a hockey player. Though I do imagine while he was growing up in Massachusetts, he did play hockey with his five brothers. Mackernon, Douglas Mackernon, he spoke English, Spanish, German, and French as a child. He grew up in an Irish family, and him and his brothers, they all worked at the family gas station. He spent 1 year at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology before serving in the U.S. Army Air Corps. He achieved the rank of major, though I found a source that lists him as a lieutenant colonel. He worked with the military on government codes and military codes. So he was an expert, sort of, in breaking codes and deciphering them. Later on, he was stationed in Alaska as a meteorologist, a weatherman. So Douglas McInerney was employed by the CIA at the time of his death, regardless of the fact that the CIA, better known as the company, would later not make that readily available. Surprise, surprise. They're always a little slow on the acknowledgments of facts. That's the way they are. Only one other group is worse than them, and that's the NSA. No such agency, the National Security Agency. To them, FOIA is just part of the alphabet they don't recognize, along with the FBI. According to one CIA officer in the early part of this century, the work that Douglas McInerney did in Asia is still considerable national security interest. I don't know what that means. It probably has something to do with China, Kazakhstan, Russia, but it's been years now. I mean, from the end of World War II and the start of the Korean War to now. Let's go back with a little history. The company, the CIA, was invented by Harry S. Truman, the president, in order to assure that there would never be another Pearl Harbor. And so he signed September 18th, 1947, the National Security Act. Our agent, we'll just call him Mac from now on, was deployed as a diplomat with the State Department, kind of a normal procedure there in China. And this was prior to the overthrow of the national government before they fled to Taiwan. So he was 37 years old, and he was stationed at Xinjiang province, northwest part of China, when Mao and his Communist Party SEMPs gained control of the country in 1949. Later in 1950, Mao's group listed him, Douglas McInerney, as an American spy. So naturally, McInerney had a plan to unask the area, but during this time, all the major roads were occupied by Mao's troops, and another route had to be executed in order to escape, so he wouldn't be executed. He started to flee the country south out of the province. Unfortunately for him and others, yes, there were others, McInerney, or Mac, met up with three white Russians and a Fulbright scholar. I have to point out that a white Russian is pasty in color. No, I'm not going to be like that. They were anti-communist and they were anti-Bolshevik. They fought against Lenin's group during the Russian Civil War, as did the United States and a few other countries at the turn of the century, a little past the end of the Great War. That's another story. That brings us to the Fulbright Scholar. Now that's interesting. A Fulbright Scholar was the idea or suggestion or bill passed by some congressman or senator from Arkansas, and it was via the U.S. State Department in the Division of Cultural Affairs. If this does not say, let me get a CIA agent in there to spy on other countries, I don't know what doesn't. What does? So this started in 1946. Now this is entering Frank Bessett. He was 27. He was a former member of the OSS. And I mention him because later on he would meet up with Mac. And together, along with the three Russians, or three white Russians, they would make their way out of the country. OSS, that's what he was a member of prior in the war, was the Office of Strategic Services. They make great t shirts. Anyway, that was headed up by Wild Bill Donovan. And now Frank was an anthropologist, just right for the Fulbright group. But unlike most State Department agents, he had to find another way to get out of the country. So pretty much he was a CIA operative at that time. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to keep this thing all together because a lot of times in history you need a scorecard or a program because you can't tell your players' numbers without a scorecard. This is the same way. So you got Frank Bessett, 27, former member of the OSS, current Fulbright scholar, no doubt a CIA operative. You got Major or Lieutenant Colonel Mackiner, who's a meteorologist, but with the State Department and now labeled as a American spy by Mao. And you got three white Russians who may or may not have been able, or they were trying to help the others get out through Tibet. So now that we get the playing field straight away, and you got, basically five white guys running out of China, and you got all of China behind them looking for them, what do you do? Well, if you're a spy, you're smart enough to know I got to go the way least expected. You know, they picked a good way that was not expected by their adversaries. You go across a desert when you're a spy on a horse. Wait for it with no name. I know I'm bad. But that's only just until you find a camel because, that's the ship of the desert. So you're crossing the desert and you're heading in the middle of winter towards the Himalayas, the highest part of the world, where they have snow all the time. They were aiming to get past the Himalayas and hopefully drift into their ultimate destination, New Delhi, India. They had to enter I'll try to pronounce this correctly, Taklakam, yeah, that's right, Taklakam Desert in China. And basically, the locals just means to them that you go in, you don't come out. Taklakam. Oh, that's refreshing. Apparently, Mac had a radio with him, and he was able to use it, allowing his bosses in Langley and D.C. about the group's progress. Still, we can't get these recordings or transcripts that are available on this because we wouldn't even know, but they screwed up in a minute that there were some, but they refused to release them because of national security from 80 years ago. So, November 18th, 1949, Mack and his band crossed the 1,000 miles and were coming in contact with the foothills of the, let's see, Kunlun Mountains along the northern edge of Tibet. For 18 days, the boys attempted to flee this area, but the mountain's highest peaks are right around 7,500 meters. That's about 4.5 miles for all my other fellow Americans in winter, and it's cold. But the winter got the best of them, like I thought it would, and they had to settle for another path. The group was fortunate enough to come in contact with a nomadic tribe, the Kazants, I think that's right, and their leader Husan, who helped them out of the cold, literally, by giving them accommodations through the harsh winter. So his band crossed the Kulan at a later time, like in March when the weather wasn't so bad. On April 29th, 1950, his party reached their first Tibetan outpost. Even though the Dalai Lama had promised safe passage through Tibet, somehow this did not transmit to the Tibetan border guards. Those stationed there mistaken them for highwaymen or communists and opened fired. Douglas Mackinnon and two of the Russian cohorts were shot dead. Surprisingly, Frank Bessel and the other Russian were allowed to go on to the capital, Lhasa. Lhasa. Mack and the other two Russians were beheaded, and their bodies were buried right where they were shot. The New York Times, with the cover story that a vice consul, Douglas Mackinnon, for the U.S. State Department was killed on July 29th, 1950, leaving China. The CIA didn't even acknowledge his employment until 2008, when the director Michael Hayden admitted to it in a speech in Los Angeles. It is believed that Douglas was the first atomic spy, and his findings helped the U.S. determine that Stalin had indeed developed an atomic device near the or in the Soviet Republic of Kazakhstan. I hope that one of those stars on the memorial wall is for Douglas at Langley. Remember, the unofficial motto of the CIA is the truth will set you free. It's from the Bible. Yeah, as long as you don't lose your head about it. I like the other motto of the Special Activities Center. It used to be called SAD, Special Activities Division. Third option. That's their motto. I really didn't do Douglas much justice. He had an interesting life, and I, a star on the wall, going through just real spy conditions. I mean, yeah, it sounds like fun camping all night in the wintertime, riding horses and camels. I'm sure it was colder than most Massachusetts winters. If you want to read more about this, I think it's, yeah, Thomas Lair, Into Tibet, the CIA's first atomic spy and his secret expedition. I think it was written in 2003, 2004. It's very interesting. It's good. This is just another little story I found I thought should be told. And that's the way it is on this channel. Sometimes it isn't. I hope you enjoy that story. Thanks for watching all the way through if you did. Please subscribe if you're not a member. If you want to leave a comment, please do. I do appreciate them and I read them all. Thanks again. I'll see you tomorrow.